Today we're going to talk about what I'm currently reading, which is the fourth book of Dune, and in the series, this is perhaps the most interesting because it's the biggest change from the rest of the books. And I want to bring up Dune today because I think it's one of the most interesting series I've ever read, and I didn't show this, but this is such a cool cover. Like, I don't know what it is about the Dune covers, but there's like such a simple beauty to them, and you can kind of like see what all of this is meant to be when you read the story, which I also find fascinating. Is that like all of the covers kind of have a correlation with what the book is about, and it doesn't make sense to the end, but then you're like, okay, I see what this is. But essentially the series is about this planet Arrakis, which is more commonly referred to as Dune. If you've seen the movies, you know what I'm talking about. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. But Dune is perhaps one of the most interesting series I've ever read because you read something like Game of Thrones, or you read it's a Song of Ice and Fire, but a Game of Thrones, the TV series or the book series, or the Lord of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, or The Hobbit, or various other series like that, and they have a start and end. They have a set time period. They don't skip around. Whereas Frank Herbert kind of took his liberties with the time scale and kind of expanded the scale to thousands and thousands of years to kind of see the implications of each ruler, of each event, of different inner workings. And it's so fascinating because it doesn't feel like Frank Herbert was trying to write a story. It feels like he was trying to tell history. It feels like through his writings he was trying to exemplify how certain actions have certain effects and how certain rulers are still affecting us till this day. And there's all sorts of interesting aspects of politics. There's all sorts of different inner workings of secret societies and global initiatives and like there's these things like it's called like the Butlerian Jihad, I think is what it's called. And basically because of that, there's no technology, there's no computers, there's no artificial intelligence, and like there's all these things that aren't even in the books that are affecting the books. And there's just something about Frank Herbert's writing that just it's unbounded by anything else I've ever read. And perhaps that's why I like it so much, and perhaps that's why I'm finding this so interesting. But I really urge you to read the Dune series because it's really a study of humanity. It's a study of human beings and how they act and how they interact and how power can corrupt and how power can destroy and how symbols are created and heroes are created and messiahs are created. It's really 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 well done in that sense. And if I had to tell you one thing about Dune that you might like or you might hate, is that every single book is written in a different style. And it's not that the writing style itself is different. Like, he uses different sentence structure, he uses different, elements of writing. One's in poetry, one's in broken English. It's not at all like Ulysses or anything that James Joyce or Borges would write, but it's different in the sense that each book is kind of its isolated thing, and each book has its own stylistic aspect of this. Like, the first Dune is purely a swashbuckling tale about a man becoming a hero. The second Dune is about a man who is a hero who has had horrible things done in his name and who is trying to salvage his image, who is trying to be the best leader he possibly can be, but it is impossible because so many people want so many different things, and he can't hold up the end of the bargain. He can't be everything that everyone wants him to be and still be a good leader and an effective leader. And it kind of doesn't like deify Paul. It doesn't put him on this pedestal. It makes him human, and in fact, it's the most realistic lens that you'll see a politician through, because I feel like there's this, regardless of what you think about your politician or various politicians throughout history, there's the constituency that hates him and there's a constituency that loves him. And both sides have mythologized, and both sides have said, this guy is this guy's great, this guy's amazing, he could do no wrong. And then the other side says, well, this guy's the worst and worst. Like, none of these perspectives are taking these people as people. And it's so interesting to see Frank Herbert kind of ground these perspectives and kind of show where these things develop and show how these things can be dangerous for good or for bad. And interestingly enough, he was certainly writing this about either Reagan or John F. Kennedy. I think early on it was definitely about JFK, but you definitely see some elements of Reagan as well. And it's interesting because you look at like Reagan and like you look at this mythos built up, and then you look at the things he did, and it's not really, to me, it doesn't really seem that well deserved. But it is what it is. That's just my perspective. And then we have The Children of Dune, which is, again, a shifting perspective, and it's another coming-of-age story, but it takes a different path, it takes a different angle, and it's more of a utilitarian angle than the outright hero angle, and how Paul's son, the hero of the first book, kind of makes a decision that Paul was unwilling to do, and the consequences of that. And that leads us into the fourth book, which absolutely nothing happens. Like seriously, nothing happens in this book. It's literally just the God Emperor telling everybody everything about what's about to happen, because he has omniscience. He can see everything. He understands things. He can read people's minds. He has every experience ever throughout recorded history and prehistoric history in his head, and he can live them out because he is all knowing. And what does this do to a person? What bounds do you take when you can play every single person that you know? What strings will you pull in order for the greater good of humanity? And it's super fascinating because it talks about humanity's shortcomings. It talks about what happens when you have absolute power. Do you become a good person, or do you become a tyrant? And that's what the essential nature of this book is so far. It's the God Emperor of Dune. They call him the tyrant. They call him the worm, because he's somewhat transformed into a no longer human being. But all these interesting things, and I really just wanted to exemplify today like where this story goes and how fascinating it is, and all these different elements. And the thing about Frank Herbert is there's so many little gems in all these books. The first Dune is about the commodifying of natural resources, and how governments can kind of create religions and kind of go behind these religions and use them for their own means. How these systems are kind of trapping people and creating a way of life and controlling a way of life, and all sorts of things like this. And then you have the whole idea of a hero and what makes a hero, and can a hero even be good? Can a hero even live up to that mythos? Can they ever do or create anything that doesn't create chaos in the inverse? And yeah, I really love Frank Herbert. I think he has a whole lot of wisdom in his books, and his philosophy is so deep and so interesting. And you see a lot of elements in our current society with these books, and you see a lot of the shortcomings. You see a lot of the control mechanisms, and it's just so fascinating to read, because normally I have to read a work of philosophy or a work of just boring textual writing in order to get the same insights as I do from reading Dune. But it's all there in a tremendous story, and it's all wrapped up in this grand world that is so fun to spend time in. And yeah, that's the video today. I just wanted to talk about Dune and talk about how much I love the series, and how I look forward to finishing the original Frank Herbert series, and perhaps moving on to the ones written by his son Brian Herbert. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that yet. It's a large commitment, 20 books. They're all very long, so could I be spending that time into other things? And I've read that there's a shift in the perspective. It's no longer this mythic, esoteric, metaphysical sort of writing. It's more stylistic, like pulp, and kind of just more grounded and more average sci-fi kind of like action, and this thing happens, and there's more definitiveness to it, whereas Frank Herbert kind of leaves things open-ended and kind of leaves things paradoxical in nature. And somebody does something and it has both good effects and bad consequences as well. And yeah, with that said, I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. If you want more from me, I wrote a book myself. I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good, so go ahead, check that out if you're interested. I'm releasing something else fairly soon too, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, with that said, I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one. Just have to say real quick, thank you guys for all the support recently. It's just really been baffling to me. It's been insane, and the overwhelming positivity is just awesome to see. Sometimes like you get into a rut. Sometimes you feel like, why am I doing this? What is it like? And then you just get like a comment like, oh, thank you so much for this video. I really enjoyed it. And then it puts things in perspective, and it reminds you why you like doing this, why this is fun. So, it's awesome to see. Thank you for the kind words, and thank you for all the support. It's just, I can't thank you guys enough. Peace out.